As always, it's, Thursday afternoon, and this time on a Thursday afternoon we always look forward to having a chat with Mark Latham, and we talk about all sorts of different stuff. Political, yeah, that's what people expect, but today we're going to start our chat talking to Mark Latham about cooking. Hello, Mark.
G'day, Brent. How you going?
I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, extra well.
Now, look, I know that you like cooking because I used to enjoy watching you and Alan Jones together, and you would always start the program with him asking you what you'd cooked for the kids before you came into work, and you always came up with a lovely meal that you had shared and cooked for the kids. So you obviously love cooking.
Yeah, I do. When I left Parliament in 2005, I decided to be the stay-at-home dad. My wife was developing her career in the law, and cooking became a necessity, and I thought, well, if I'm going to do this properly, I'll have to do a bit of research and study some recipes. And as you point out, on Alan's show there a couple of years ago, by the end of the program, people remembered the cooking recipes more than all our attempts to solve the problems of the world. So it became very popular, and we put out the challenge, does any publisher want to put these recipes into a book? And New Holland came forward, and yesterday we launched that book of 79 of my recipes, just one from Alan Jones. Boy, talk about carrying the bloke.
Oh, really? Only one?
Only one. His sultana scones, because I was putting those recipes forward on the TV show, and not to be outdone, Alan came in one day with his mum's famous sultana scone recipe.
Right.
And we had sampled the scones on air, and he put up the recipe on the screen. It didn't even have the sultanas in it. It was all a bit dodgy. We've allowed the recipe to go in with the sultanas included in the book that was launched yesterday.
And how did the launch go?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I think obviously it's a bit of fun. It's a novelty. It's a departure from the serious talk about politics and current events. But the important message is that dads can cook. And back in the day, dads did creative things with their hands to help their kids. They built things like tree houses or billy carts. Well, that doesn't happen now because the kids are inside on the electronic devices. And I think the modern equivalent of dads doing something creative with their hands for the kids is to hop into the kitchen and have a go at an evening meal. If the dad's working busy, 6 days a week, well, maybe on a Sunday evening have a go. And if you're a stay-at-home dad, don't feel embarrassed about that. Learn how to cook. So I think it's a great way to relate to your children, spark up conversation. I'm very fortunate. I'm very close to my 3 children, and I think in good part that's because I've spent so much time in the kitchen and over the dining room table talking to them about the food, the origins of it, getting their critique, their sense of humour. It's been a real bonding process.
Do you have a favourite meal that you like to cook?
Well, I like a Tuscan dish called a rosto misto. I like plenty of sauce and moisture in my meals, and this one's full of chicken, sausage, crusty bread, potatoes, lashings of olive oil, rosemary. It's a real feast if you like something moist and hearty, and I love Italian food, and a rosto misto, which is somewhere in the book, is my favourite.
How do you say it? Rosto?
A rosto.
A rosto.
Was it A-R-R-O-S-T-O? Risto, R-I-S-T-O, a rosto misto. I've got a few sort of, they call them peasant Tuscan dish, but they're basic hearty Italian cooking recipes in the book, and they all go well.
And do you enjoy a glass of wine with those?
Yeah, inevitably. Beer, if we then turn to watch the footy, on the weekend, so that's all part of the scene. And the other benefit, Janine comes home from work, a long day, and she's getting pretty demanding. She says, "Where's the cuisine? Where's the good food?" You're doing something for your loved one who's worked hard, and that's rewarding as well.
Good for you. Well, I believe that you're going to generously give us a couple of copies to give away.
Yeah, 10.
10. There you go.
A couple of weeks. It can be the prize for the quiz, and happy to do that as a promotion for the book and the program.
Fantastic. Thank you. So will you sign them?
Well, it's got to come from the publishing house.
Oh, okay.
I haven't got myself here at home to sign.
All right.
So I don't think they'll be signed.
They won't be signed,
but you can't eat the signature. The main thing is you can cook the recipes and eat the food.
Look, I wanted to ask, we've got a couple of things to get to today, but I wanted to ask you this question particularly, which is not on our list of things to talk about. But look, we get phone calls after you and I chat, and we get emails from people saying, "Why don't you run for Parliament again?"
Well, I'm thinking about it. It's not an easy decision because my youngest child's 10. I got out of politics because I had young children, and that was one of the reasons. So I don't want to be sort of reversing that decision. She's 10 at the moment, a very capable young child. So it's a possibility down the track, but juggling that sort of option, having been there and being a little bit once bitten, twice shy, and juggling that against the needs of family is not easy, and finding the right spot to run. If you run, you want to do it to win it, and that's not always easy to sort out. But it's a possibility, and I've got to say I'm very thankful for the people who think so kindly of me, that they'd want me back in politics. I kind of left the system with my tail between my legs, and for people to say, oh, you're a lot better now, I find very gratifying.
So, well, there you go. We answered the question, so there's a possibility there. Let's talk about banking executives going to jail. Should they or shouldn't they? The Treasurer thinks they should. Barnaby Joyce has come out this morning and he's apologised. We haven't heard what the Prime Minister's got to say because he's out of the country at the moment.
Well, I think people are horrified at this idea that in getting financial advice from the Commonwealth Bank and AMP, the advice service, that no service was delivered, but people were continuing to be charged fees. So you take money off people and knowingly don't provide the service, that's theft, isn't it?
It is, yeah, absolutely.
And we tend to have a tendency where white-collar crime is treated a bit differently to other forms of crime, that because the person wears a suit and tie, maybe they're not as guilty and culpable as others. But if you're charging people money for a service that you're knowingly not delivering, you're knocking off the money. And surely that's got to be a criminal offence. So whether they go to jail or not, I think they certainly should face criminal charges, and hopefully that'll be one of the recommendations of this Royal Commission. I was sceptical about the Royal Commission, I must say, but boy, the evidence that has come forward, it certainly is justified to have the inquiry.
Today it's come out in the inquiry that the financial planners at the CBA, their subsidiary charged fees for our ongoing clients, for service to ongoing clients who'd been dead for years, the Banking Royal Commission had heard. And apparently the planners were made aware of this, but they still continued to charge.
Well, if you're a tradie or a cleaner or someone out of white-collar work knocking off money, you probably would go to jail. So these guys, the standards got to apply equally to them. They should go through the criminal justice system, and we should find out what the system holds for them and not show them any leniency just because they work in an office and they wear a suit and tie.
Now, Malcolm Turnbull has, in the last couple of days, the Turnbull government certainly has decided against posthumously promoting one of Australia's greatest war heroes in a verdict that will disappoint some senior ministers, I dare say, but appease military leaders who feared any change would undermine all ranks across the Defence Force. This is the John Monash, the war hero John Monash. The Turnbull government has decided against a promotion for this war hero.
Well, Brent, don't you find it a bit strange that people try to rewrite history?
Yeah, I do.
There is a tendency to rewrite all forms of history, and in his day, John Monash was a wonderful commander of Australian troops at Gallipoli and on the Western Front. He was honoured by being knighted on the battlefield. Not many people ever get knighted. So he became Sir John Monash on the battlefield. He was a lieutenant general. No one during World War I or shortly thereafter suggested that he should have been a field marshal. And even Malcolm Turnbull and Tony Abbott are agreeing on this. Tony Abbott points out that they didn't have the position of chief of the Defence Force at that time, and being a general was the appropriate rank for Monash. So, and he's been honoured in so many other ways. On Anzac Day, they're opening the Sir John Monash Centre, like a war memorial centre in France. He's got a university and a freeway named after him in Melbourne. I'm sure many parks and other civic memorials named after the great Monash. I just don't see... I think there's many more important things if we're going to honour past war memories and acts of heroism. But the thing we talked about last week about war memorials brought into scratch. I went to one in my local area, Brownlow Hill Soldiers Memorial, just this morning. It's in terrible state of disrepair, terrible. So how about we concentrate on properly honouring all those who served? I think Monash has been honoured. To rewrite history this way and make him a field marshal when he never acted in that position when he was alive 100 years ago, to me just seems strange.
We had I think it was the New South Wales Minister for Veteran Affairs call us last Thursday afternoon, directly after you and I had a chat. And he wanted to put his case forward, saying that the New South Wales government was putting forward, I think it was $1 million, wasn't it, for the restoration of these memorials and how you could go about getting part of that money, and you had up until Anzac Day to put in a submission. Okay,
well, that's good. I wrote to him this morning about the Brownlow Hill Soldiers Memorial in outer Western Sydney, because I heard that he had rung in to the show, and he's got his chance now to stump up the money. It's one thing to talk about this, but I can assure the Minister, if he's listening again, that Brownlow Hill monument is covered in mould. It hasn't been touched for 97 years, I think, since it was unveiled. It's an abandoned site. It's quite sad. It lists the war dead. And to see the memorial in that state, abandoned, long grass, no adequate fencing, no... You drive past it, there's no signage even to say what it is. It's a sad, sad commentary on how we forget about these heroes. And if the Minister is listening, please check your email, because I've put in a submission to get some support here. Minister, stump up and help us do something good for that memorial.
Because the question was raised, is $1 million enough? I mean, is $1 million enough? Because when you look at the number of memorials just simply across the state of New South Wales and you divide that by $1 million, you don't get much for a couple of $1,000s these days.
No, you don't. Most of these take $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to restore properly, because you've got to get the stonemasons in, you've got to put the plaques up, some fencing, garden, a pathway so people can lay their flowers and their wreaths. And, Brent, around New South Wales, every country town had these young men 100 years ago who enlisted. They came in from the country towns and thought this would be a great adventure on the other side of the world, and they'd be home by Christmas. Now, rightly or wrongly, it introduced Australia to the international scene, and sadly a lot of these guys didn't come back. But every country town has got a memorial. For those who did come back, for those who were the fallen, every country town and many of the outer suburbs have got a memorial. So $1 million doesn't go far, and if that's all the Minister's putting up, I hope he's got a good slice for the project I've got in mind.
Okay.
And many others around New South Wales. I'd urge other people, have a look at your memorials. Some of these have just fallen into terrible, terrible state of disrepair, and we've got an anniversary coming up, the 11th of November, 100 years since the end of World War I. Let's get these memorials back in shape.
Yeah, make a noise, because that creates momentum, and momentum gets things done. It does. The Marvel movie, they've decided to release it on Anzac Day. Normally they release these major movies on a Thursday, don't they? But they've pulled it a day earlier for, is it a cash grab? There was one of the commentators on one of the breakfast shows in Sydney this morning had a go about the fact that he felt it was a cash grab because they normally release the movies on a Thursday and they brought it forward to Anzac Day. It conflicts with Anzac Day. This is this Marvel movie that they want to release. I must be honest, I'm not a Marvel fan, so I don't think I'll be lining up to see the movie.
Yeah, I've seen a few Avenger movies. They're getting a little bit boring because they're repetitive and they're probably milking the franchise. But I don't see an inconsistency between going to an Anzac Day service in the morning. Young families, what do your children do in the afternoon and the evening? Is there a big problem to honour Anzac at the service in the morning and then the kids and the young families go to the movies?
Not at all.
No, I don't think so. And I think there might be something online now saying the movie has been pulled, that this outrage
Truly
has meant that they've postponed the release of the movie in Australia. I would have thought they were doing it because Wednesday's a public holiday. And for a lot of young families, hopefully people do go to the Anzac Day ceremonies. That's respectful. But what do you do with the kids for the rest of the afternoon and the evening? And a movie sometimes is appropriate. It's not a movie related to Anzac Day or real war action in any shape or form. And I think Carl Stefanovic there on Channel 9, he's lecturing us to boycott the movie and take our kids to the dawn service. Well, is he going to take his? Or will he be lolling around on a yacht in Sydney Harbour, the sort of we've seen recently? That doesn't look very respectful. So, I think Carl might be well advised to get his own house in order before he goes lecturing other parents about what we do on Wednesday.
Well, it says, what was the headline I read? Cinemas are facing a major backlash from veterans groups furious that they are releasing the new Avengers movie Infinity War a day early to cash in on Anzac Day. So that's
it's
the
a public
approach.
holiday.
That's right.
It's a public holiday where obviously families are looking for things to do in the afternoon and evening. And on Anzac Day, people do a lot of things after the service. Some people have to work. That's not disrespectful. That's just earning an income. So I think you can do both on Anzac Day. People can get about their normal activities. It's a public holiday. The kids won't be at school. So families have got to occupy their time. But most importantly, everyone get out there and do something with the Anzac services, whether it's a morning service or a dawn one, sure. But I don't see how it's inconsistent for people to also go to the movies.
No, neither do I. We won't talk to you until after Anzac Day. We'll talk to you next Thursday. So it's if you can't get to a service, just get up early and watch it on TV, because there's a service on TV. So be part of it and be respectful.
Yeah, and talk to your children about the meaning of Anzac and
That's right.
and the importance of the Australian War Service, the history of World War I. and also do something about those war memorials. So, there's a lot of things families, I'm sure they'll be doing. And if you catch a movie at 5 p.m. in the afternoon, well, I don't think that's the end.
No, it's not. Thank you, as always, for your time. Lovely to chat with you. We'll wait to get those books, and we'll make a big fuss about it when we do it with the quizzes.
Yeah, fantastic. Cook up the recipes. Good on you, Brent.
Thanks, Mark. Talk to you next week, mate. Bye-bye. That's Mark Latham with our weekly chat this afternoon.